Have you ever heard of a person who had an accident with a full dormitory research? In his freshman year, the dormitory's stuffy gourd committed suicide in the dormitory, and the school made it a condition of research and didn't let us talk nonsense. The police finally concluded that Stuffy Gourd committed suicide due to long-term depression. But why did he secretly put a strange note in my pillowcase before he died, leaving an address information and a string of numbers on it? The stuffed gourd was dead. He was hanging from the electric fan in the dormitory. But to this day, I still shudder to think back on the content of the monitoring. At 2 a.m., the stuffed gourd appeared from the end of the corridor. He walked to the door of the dormitory and just put his hand on the door, and then the picture stopped. The dormitory manager thought that we touched the pause button, but found that the time in the lower right corner of the monitoring screen kept changing. It was not that the picture stopped, but that the stuffed gourd did not move. So the dormitory manager pressed the fast-forward button and fast-forwarded for 2 minutes. The lights in the corridor were dark, but the monitoring was equipped with night vision function, so he could still see the stuffed gourd's movements clearly. He still didn't move, and it lasted for a full 5 minutes before he put his hand down from the door, took out his phone and flipped through it, put the phone back in his pocket but still didn't enter the dormitory, turned around and left. The studio followed the direction of the stuffy gourd and called out the surveillance there. The next scene was very strange. This stuffy gourd had been walking in the corridor of the dormitory building from 2 to 3 in the morning, from the 5th floor to the 3rd floor, and from the 3rd floor to the top floor. He was like a ghost at midnight, wandering around various floors. The sensor lights were black and bright, and they were bright and black. In the later surveillance, the stuffy gourd went to the top floor, and after a brief blind spot, he reappeared in the screen. At this time, he walked to the wall, climbed up the railing, and looked downstairs. I could feel the urge to jump down, but I could also feel that he was afraid. He made a long jump in place and repeated it several times, but he still couldn't jump down in the end, maybe because he was afraid that his body would become bloody after falling from the building. I saw that he reached into his pocket and took out a nylon rope. The surveillance didn't look carefully, but it should be the stuffy gourd he hung. As if he made up his mind, he turned and went downstairs, rushing directly to the 5th floor. This time, he came to the door of the dormitory, without hesitation, slowly pushed open the door of the dormitory, entered it, and never came out again. The short 2-hour picture was fast-forwarded 7 times, and the actual picture we saw was less than 15 minutes. It was this short 15 minutes that made everyone present depressed. The principal's face was the ugliest. Later, after the police station intervened, the incident was quickly characterized, and the conclusion was that the patient with depression committed suicide. The school also began to do public relations work at the same time and restricted the media from reporting on the matter. We accepted the conclusion that the stuffed gourd committed suicide. So far, this is the version that has been circulating so far. But in fact, this story is not over, and only I know the truth about him. Maybe many of you will doubt his authenticity after reading this version in my mouth. After moving to the dormitory 2 weeks later, I found a note in the pillowcase while cleaning my pillowcase. It was a note from the stuffy gourd. The note said the floor tiles of the 2nd ventilation column at the east entrance of the top floor, 9 times 0821. The last time I washed my pillowcase, I didn't have this piece of paper. Then I thought about it. Maybe the stuffy gourd had stayed in my pillow before hanging the thorn. I went through the other roommates' yellowed pillowcases and made sure there was nothing in them, so I was sure it was just for me. It had an address written on it and a string of numbers. This string of numbers I knew was his birthday. What about this address? I decided to check it out. I went to the rooftop in the afternoon and then found the position written on the note. I found that there was a loose tile on the floor and I moved it lightly. There was a bank card under it. Looking at the birthday left on the bank card and the note, this birthday is probably the password of the bank card. I went to the self-service ATM machine in the school when no one was there, inserted the bank card, and found that the card was not damaged, so I entered his birthday, really the password, and clicked to check the balance. There were 47,700 yuan in it. I couldn't figure it out. How could the stuffy gourd have so much money? So I went to the self-service counter of the bank outside the school to check the transaction records of the bank card, and found that the money was remitted from 5,000 to 5,000 in the bank card, a total of 10 times. I also looked at the date of the remittance of the $5,000. In fact, these dates are quite regular, namely March 17th, 24, 31, April 7th, 14, 21, 28, May 5th, and 12. On the 19th, a total of 10 remittances were made, totaling 50,000 yuan every other week, and the most recent one was 3 weeks ago. Looking at the calendar, the remittance day was on Sunday, and the remittance record happened to be broken in the week when the stuffy gourd committed suicide. I feel more and more that the reason for the stuffy gourd suicide is not simple. I want to check who paid the money to the stuffy gourd club, but the self-service platform cannot check the account info of the remitter. Obviously, the clue is broken here, but it is not completely changed. The remittance time is very close to the time when the stuffy gourd goes out to work every week, so the money is likely to be related to the part-time job of the stuffy gourd on weekends. This part-time job is definitely not a tutor. What kind of tutor can earn 5,000 a week? Ask if Hulu did something illegal. At that time, I had this idea in my mind. What kind of job can make a freshman student earn 5,000 a week? Fraud, theft. The more I thought about it, the more outrageous I felt. When I came back from the bank, I didn't tell the other 2 roommates what I had investigated. It's not that I didn't believe them, but I just didn't want more people to know what Hulu did. At the end of the first school year, my classmates were frantically preparing for exams and making up homework. In fact, a lot of homework in our dormitory was done by Hulu, so I suddenly thought of a clue at that time. I remember one day, when I had classes and I didn't have classes, he needed a file on the computer, so he called me and passed it to him. At that time, he sent me the unlock password of the computer. It was this unlock password that made me think of the direction to continue the investigation. In fact, in life, many people set passwords to the same number. Now that I know the unlock password of the computer, it is possible to open his chat software through this password. When the police were investigating, I had already said that the phone of the muggy had been formatted, so I immediately contacted his parents as the classmate of the muggy. I explained that there were files and homework that I made together with him on the computer of the muggy. Uncles and aunts are reasonable people. After confirming my identity, I succeeded on the 3rd day. After receiving the computer, I couldn't wait to open his computer, log into the computer's software, and finally successfully found the chat records and chat objects on his computer. There were not many, and soon I was able to filter out a note that was the account number of a certain tutor. I looked at the WeChat chat and found that there was a girl in the 2nd year of high school. The chat content between them was also normal, and it was indeed a discussion and study. The girl would occasionally send some selfies of herself to Hulu. The girl in the photo was pretty good looking. The most important thing is that the tutor's job would borrow 300 yuan by way of transfer every week. It seems that the weekly amount in the bank card, the 5,000 foreign exchange payment, has nothing to do with the tutor's work. The clue is broken again here. When I got to this point, I found things increasingly strange. He did go to work as a tutor every weekend, but according to the chat records of the tutor work, he only worked 2 hours a day every week, so he often didn't go back to the dormitory on weekend evenings. What did he do? Maybe he had extra work after the tutor work. It was a job that could earn him 5,000 yuan a week. I guess it must be so, but I don't know where to start. After a long time, there was no progress in the investigation. The turning point of the matter happened during the big internship. Yes, 3 years after it happened.